From the north side of the San Francisco Bay to Singapore, welcome to Urban X Real Talk Fitness Radio with your host, business owner, lecturer, author, master trainer, Tiaja. With over 30 years of experience in the health and fitness industry, he will challenge the fitness between your ears. So prepare your mind, body, and soul for the revolution of self-care, the evolution of fit, with real talk about real people, real health, real fitness, and the real deal behind our present illness culture. Real talk every time, all the time. Get weekly insights on how to shift your thinking, emoting, eating, training, hydrating, goal setting, and resting for you, the everyday athlete. You can cheat your fitness, but you can't steal your health flow. It's Tuesday, 9 a.m. Let's flow.
There is a war on health choice and common sense in America. It is a silent war. It is an expensive war. It is a violent war. It is a socially engineered war. This war has killed more Americans than all other wars combined and continues to do so with the precision of a smart bomb and on a mind-numbing scale. The reason why there isn't a public outcry for the end to this war is because most Americans aren't even aware that they are in one. So here we are. We are a more violent nation today, which is to say we are more afraid and angrier, more distrusting, intolerant, and less caring than we've ever been. We are at war with our families and friends and neighbors and elected officials, our social values, and ourselves. We have even coined terms like frenemies to further explain our confusion. We are a society that has gotten rid of absolutes, which can only mean that we are absolutely certain about nothing. Yet we are in a war, and in war there are always casualties. The term war casualty applies to any person who is lost to a military unit by having died or been severely injured from wounds or disease. War casualties are classified into two categories: hostile and non-hostile disease and non-battle injuries. The precipitous rise in disease and drug abuse, as well as addiction in America, is a telltale sign of hostile as well as non-hostile war casualties. Despite popular opinion, this generation is no weaker than the ones which preceded it. They are just more vulnerable and ill-equipped mentally, physically, and spiritually to fight back. Among the hardest tasks that anyone can undertake, and one of the most important, is to look honestly in the mirror. If we allow ourselves to do so, we should have little difficulty in finding the absolute truth in at least that. Welcome to Urban X Real Talk Fitness Radio, where we challenge the fitness between your ears. I'm your host, Tiaja, and today on episode 47, part 13 of our series titled The War on Health, Choice, and Common Sense, I'm going to discuss what I believe is a major problem, and that is what I call the male distraction. Now, last week, I gave a brief rundown of Professor Noam Chomsky's 10 media manipulation strategies. So today, I'm going to take a look at how such manipulation has negatively impacted men's health. 2018 will be just another year unless today you decide that it won't be. It is Tuesday, June 26, 2018. Let's flow.
Now to the first part of a series you'll see here every Wednesday in the month of March, focusing on men in America. The signs are everywhere. If you're a middle-aged man, you probably know a peer who has killed himself in recent years, at least one. If you're a parent, you may have noticed that your daughter's friends seem a little more on the ball than your son's. They get better grades, they smoke much less marijuana, they spend less time playing video games, they go to more prestigious colleges. If you're an employer, you may have noticed that your female employees show up on time. The young men often don't. And of course, if you live in this country, you've just seen a horrifying series of mass shootings, far more than we've ever had. Women didn't do that. In every case, the shooter was a man. Something ominous is happening to men in America. Everyone who pays attention knows that. What's odd is how rarely you hear it publicly acknowledged. Our leaders pledge to create more opportunities for women and girls, whom they imply are failing. Men don't need help. They're the patriarchy. They're fine, more than fine. But are they fine? Here are the numbers. Start with the most basic, life and death. The average American man will die 5 years before the average American woman. One of the reasons for this is addiction. Men are more than twice as likely as women to become alcoholics. They're also twice as likely to die of a drug OD. In New Hampshire, one of the states hardest hit by the opioid crisis, 73% of overdose deaths were men. But the saddest reason for shortened lifespans is suicide. 77% of all suicides in America are committed by men. The overall rate is increasing at a dramatic pace. Between 1997 and 2014, there was a 43% rise in suicide deaths among middle-aged American men. The rates are highest among American Indian and white men, who kill themselves at about 10 times the rate of Hispanic and black women. You often hear America's incarceration crisis. Well, that's almost exclusively a male problem, too. Over 90% of inmates are men. Now, these problems are complex, but we know that they start young. And relative to girls, boys are failing in school. More girls than boys graduate high school. Considerably more go to and graduate from college. In schools at every level, boys account for the overwhelming majority of discipline cases. One study found that fully 1 in 5 high school boys had been diagnosed with some form of hyperactivity disorder. That's compared with just 1 in 11 girls. Many of them were medicated for it. The long-term health effects of those medications, not fully understood, but they do appear to include depression in later life. Women now decisively outnumber men in graduate school. They earn the majority of doctoral degrees. They're now the majority of new enrollees in both law and medical schools. For men, the consequences of failing in school are long-term and profound. Between 1979 and 2010, working-age men with only high school degrees saw their real hourly wages drop about 20%. Over the same period, high school-educated women saw their wages rise. The decline of the industrial economy disproportionately hurt men. There are now 7 million working-age men in America who don't work. They've dropped out of the labor force. Nearly half of them take pain medication on any given day. That is the highest rate in the world by far. Far fewer young men get married than did just a few decades ago, and fewer stay married. About 1 in 5 American children live now only with their mothers. That's double the rate of 1970. Millions more boys growing up without fathers. Young adult men are now more likely to live with a parent than they are to live with a spouse or a partner. That is not the case for young women. Single women buy their own homes at more than twice the rate of single men. More women than men now have driver's licenses. Whenever gender differences come up in public debate, the so-called wage gap seems to dominate the conversation. You've heard it. A woman makes 77 cents for every dollar a man earns. That's a statistic that you'll hear a lot. Presidents have repeated it, many candidates. It's everywhere. And yet that number compares all American men to all American women across all professions. No legitimate social scientist would consider that a valid or meaningful measure. The number doesn't mean anything. It's intentionally misleading. It's a talking point. Once you compare men and women with similar experience, working the same hours and similar jobs for the same period of time, that's the only way you can measure it, the gap all but disappears. In fact, it may invert. One study using census data found that single women in their 20s living in metropolitan areas now earn 8% more on average than their male counterparts. By the way, the majority of managers in the workplace are now women. Women on average are scoring higher on IQ tests than men are. Even physically, men are falling behind. A recent study found that almost half of young men failed the Army's entry-level physical fitness exam during basic training. Fully 70% of American men are now overweight or obese. That's compared to 59% of American women. Perhaps most bafflingly and terrifyingly, men seem to be becoming less male fundamentally, measurably. Sperm counts, for example, across the West have plummeted. They're down almost 60% since the early 1970s. Scientists don't know why this is. Testosterone levels in men have also fallen precipitously. One study found that average levels of male testosterone dropped by 1% every year after 1987, and it's not related to age. In other words, the average 40-year-old man in 2017 would have testosterone levels 30% lower than the average 40-year-old man in 1987. There is no upside to this trend. Lower testosterone levels in men are associated with depression, lethargy, weight gain, decreased cognitive ability. Nothing like this has ever happened to a population this big. So you'd think we'd want to know exactly why. What's going on? How do we fix it? And yet the media ignore that story. It's considered a fringe topic somehow. Nor is it, believe it or not, a priority in the scientific research establishment. We checked, and we couldn't find a single NIH-funded study on why testosterone levels are falling. We did find a study on, quote, pubic hair grooming prevalence and motivation among women in the U.S. So those are the numbers, and they paint a very clear picture. American men are failing in body, in mind, and in spirit. This is a crisis. Yet our leaders pretend it's not happening, and in fact, they tell us the opposite is true. Women are victims. Men are oppressors. To question that assumption is to risk punishment. Even as women far outpace men in higher education, for example, virtually every college campus supports a women's studies department whose core goal is to attack male power. Our politicians and business leaders internalize and amplify that message. Men are privileged, women are oppressed. Hire and promote and reward accordingly. Now, that would be fine if it were true, but it's not true. At best, it's an outdated view of an America that no longer exists. At worst, it's a pernicious lie. Either way, ignoring the decline of men does not help anyone. Men and women need each other. One cannot exist without the other. That is elemental biology. It's also the reality that each one of us has lived with our parents and siblings and friends. When men fail, all of us suffer. How did this happen? How can we fix it? We hope that this series, each Wednesday this month, answers those questions.
Now, I'm not sure if I agree with all of Tucker Carlson's talking points. Moreover, I'm just not going to spend any time debating the merits of a comparative analysis between men and women's wages, education levels, etc. In my opinion, those are arguments that fail to empower men or women, so I mostly consider them useless. Not to mention, much of that banter is nothing more than a political red herring. But there are a few things that I consider particularly noteworthy. Since 1987, the sperm count of men has dropped nearly 60%. Now, not surprising, men have also seen a precipitous decline in their overall testosterone levels. And as Tucker alluded to, no one seems to know the reasons why, and in many cases, no one seems to care to know one way or the other. Nonetheless, that has not stopped the medical industry from fabricating a disorder called low T. Now, before the human physiology majors in the audience become completely unglued, I do realize that medical science has had a base understanding of male testosterone since the 1930s. What I'm talking about is the recent changing of the nomenclature from hypogonadism, which had to do with diminished functionality of the gonads, to what we now know commercially as low T. Now, low testosterone, or low T, is the underproduction of or lack of the production of testosterone in men. According to medical science, the causes of low T may include other chronic medical conditions, such as diabetes, infections, obesity, or other hormonal conditions. In short, they don't know. Isn't it interesting how no one seems to know how the testosterone levels of men have declined, yet there is a name and a classification and prescribed medical treatment for it? And isn't it also interesting how the fitness industry has capitalized on this opportunity by introducing a host of testosterone-boosting products? Now think about the number of commercials targeting male enhancement. Now, GNC in particular has a long-running commercial targeting men over 40, which features retired big league home run hitter Frank Thomas. Other products like Force Factor, Alpha King, is sold by one of the greatest cross-sports athletes, at least in my opinion, that I've ever seen, Bo Jackson, who played football with the Oakland Raiders and baseball with the Kansas City Royals during the football offseason. The choice of athlete here is deliberate. I mean, after all, what better way to appeal to men than to give them an opportunity to compete against one of their sports icons or superheroes? See, the subtle inference is to win back your competitive edge. But remember, men seldom compete, they compare. But they do compete through their sports teams and favorite athletes. Of course, the advertisers of these products know this about men, so it should come as no surprise that a home run hitter and a touchdown king, two men who are both known for their power, would be respective spokespersons for male enhancement products. Now, I'm going to play the actual Nugenics commercial, but before I do, here's an example of how they advertise to men, or in other words, what they think of them. be more of the man you want in the gym or the bedroom? In another version of the same product, they ask men this question: what if there was a way to get huge boosts in libido, drive, confidence, and vitality? Would you be man enough to try it? What scientists in Australia realized during their clinical studies on the main ingredient in eugenics was that it has just as much effect on the libido as it does on energy and muscle satisfaction. The results are unbelievable, it says.
And over 40, have you tried the GNC award-winning innovation designed to invigorate your body and increase your libido? If you're experiencing lower sex drive, general sluggishness, and decreased performance, you need Nugenics. Nugenics is a powerful man-boosting innovation. For 2013, it won GNC's Innovative Product of the Year and was also named GNC's #1 selling men's vitality product. For a limited time, you can enjoy a complimentary bottle by calling 1-800-950-9724. Nugenics uses a clinically researched key ingredient to invigorate a man's body and increases libido. Enjoy more passion, higher sex drive, improved performance. Be more of the man you want to be in the gym and in the bedroom.
Now here's my 2 cents, and feel free to keep the change. First of all, what is muscle satisfaction? Now, I've trained thousands of clients, and not once have I ever asked one had they reached a certain level of muscle satisfaction. And here's the real kicker: would you be man enough to try it? What advertisers are well aware of is that ridicule and shaming can be powerful motivators, especially for men. That is, by ridiculing a man's masculinity, they greatly enhance their chances of getting him to do something they want him to do, and in this case, to buy their product. Asking a man, is he man enough to try something, is akin to questioning his toughness, his heart. Advertisers are well aware of this. They are also keenly aware of a man's competitive drive, but most men are not. And so now 1 out of every 3 men over the age of 40 use Viagra. But for what? To be more of the man you want to be in the gym or the bedroom? You know, when I look at some of the former bodybuilders like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who has allegedly undergone liver transplants and heart surgeries, they look as though they have never lifted weights in their lives. Now, most of my clients, male and female, who have trained naturally for symmetry and balance, look phenomenal in their 80s. Now, I am as strong as I was in my 20s, and I have never taken a drop of steroids. Eating, sleeping, hydrating, and resting, yes, resting, has been the key. But what's truly sad is that the very media that feeds the illusion that so-called real men have to be supermen and gladiators continues to deflect the obvious physical breakdown of ordinary men. I have friends who were muscle-bound freaks in their 20s and 30s, and now they have either lost all their gains or live in chronic pain every single day. Is it worth it? Well, to most men, the answer would probably be yes, but life is too short to live in pain, or to the allegiance of a team, or to the allegiance of an individual athlete, especially when comparing yourself leads to the enhancement of only one facet of your being. I could spend the next few minutes talking about the reverse psychology that is successfully used on men. Sports in particular are used to distract men by getting them to buy into an alter ego while destroying any hope of nurturing a healthy one of their own. So men go to great lengths to stay in the game, even when their distractions create biochemical imbalances in them from stressing over whether or not their favorite team will make the playoffs. If we look at the media manipulation playbook, it is clear to see that such tactics have damaged men emotionally, psychologically, and yes, eventually, physically. The biological component that makes them men is now under attack. We can blame estrogenic foods, GMOs, lifestyle, a myriad of things, but what it ultimately comes down to is this: men themselves. That is, how and why they need to be distracted from being men. My issue comes down to basic human bioscience. Whatever you take externally to enhance what the body naturally produces internally will cause the body to shut down its own manufacturing centers of that particular thing, i.e. hormones. The human body is so intelligent that it will eventually switch to a catabolizing system whereby it will break down its own muscle or borrow minerals from its bones if given a reason to do so. All of our male heroes look like Superman. There's a reason for that. That's because Superman and superheroes are known for their strength and their stamina, their vitality, but particularly their physical power. The suggestion is that if you take a male testosterone product, or even if your team wins, you will have all your superpowers restored. But this is my question. Even if you were to somehow magically restore all of your so-called superpowers, the fact would remain that every Superman still has his kryptonite. The reason men are dying is because they no longer aspire to be anything other than Clark Kent. Well, that is, until they turn on ESPN or Fox Sports to watch their real Superman. Dear friends, I wish above all things that you be in health and that you prosper just as your soul prospers. You've been listening to Urban X Real Talk Fitness Radio with your host, Tiaja. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast by downloading our app at tiajae.podbean.com. And while you're at it, don't forget to check out our website at www.urbanxfitness.net. There you will find all of our awesome catalogs of natural nutritional products, designer sportswear, as well as our digital workout books with embedded how-to videos for home and gym use. Also, check out any one of our popular custom 4.5 menus. They are all available through our online stores, the Urban Experience Fit Stores 1 and 2. And last thing, please feel free to share our podcast with friends, family, and our coworkers. And until next week, as always, walk in health and peace.